Hey everyone, Nick Bellezza, hopeless guitar enthusiast with you once again. And let me tell you something, I am obsessed with guitars. I mean, half of my life is basically food, procuring food, shopping for food, cooking it, eating food, cleaning dishes, all food. But the other half is guitars. I'm obsessed with guitars. Building guitars, finishing guitars, fixing guitars, everything to do with guitars. I am so obsessed with guitars that I can't just buy them and play them. I have to build them. Now, I'm gonna put this out here right now. I don't consider myself a luthier. Parts builders I find is a little bit of a derogatory term. There's still a lot of skill that is involved with putting together a guitar. I'm not any kind of craftsman. I'm learning as I go, but I'm just so obsessed with it that I am finding the people, finding the resources, doing the work, and teaching myself all the processes of guitar building and displaying them here on these YouTube videos. So I am proud to feature in this build series the Bellezza Guitars Silver Fox Dog Hair Finished Guitar. So this guitar was finished in a technique that's called Ceruse. Now Ceruse is basically where you take a porous wood, dye it a certain color, and then fill it with a contrasting color. Epiphone did this in the mid-60s and they called it the Silver Fox finish. And ever since I saw that finish, I always wanted to replicate it. I actually started shooting videos for this build series all the way back in spring of 2018. I finally finished the guitar off in the summer of 2021, so it was an off and on project for the last 3 years. But I'm really proud at how the guitar turned out. It looks really nice, and it just goes to show that even with consumer products, rattle cans and stuff like that, and a little bit of elbow grease and technique, you can get a really professional looking product even without the most professional of equipment. So if you're new to Bellezza Guitars, please like, comment, subscribe. Plenty more build video series and demos to come. But without any further ado, let's take a look at this build process from front to back. So here is the Bellezza Guitars Silver Fox, or dog hair if you will, status symbol build. So it all goes back to January of 2017 when I took this picture of all my potential guitar projects on the floor of the guitar apartment. This is where I started doing my YouTube videos. And I actually had some of these necks and bodies as far back as like 2013. So I would carry these things around with me wherever I was renting. And I just didn't have the time, the resources, or the space to really work on guitars. So I'd finish them when I could, but most of them just stayed in this raw state. So the second one in from the left is the one we're going to feature in this video, and that is a mahogany body S-type with a bound rosewood neck. Now at this time these were all just kind of pictured in my mind's eye. I didn't know if I'd get to finish them or what I would do with them, but I had concepts in my mind for all these guitars, and luckily as of 2021 I finished them all. They all became completed playable guitars, and I hope to feature some of the other ones in other video build series here on this channel. So let's begin by taking a look at the body. Now this is a relatively inexpensive mahogany body. It's patterned off a real 63 Strat, and it's pretty much cut and ready to go. It's ready for finishing, but there's a few imperfections in the wood, some blowout on the sides with some filler, some scrapes. So some stuff we're going to have to address as we do the finishing process, but something that's relatively inexpensive but looks good for my first try at this Ceruse finish. Now always practice on scrap, and my first attempt was using black trans-tint water-based dye on a slab of mahogany, and it just didn't get the look I wanted. It didn't penetrate the wood, and it wouldn't accept the filler. So I'm trying a different technique here, and I have a whole slab of ash, and I'm actually doing two guitars at once, one mahogany and one ash, but both will work for this Ceruse type finish. So I'm sanding the board flat, and then now I'm using a wire brush to open up the pores. Now this does two things. First, it puts a hard edge on all the pores, because keep in mind, we're going to stain and seal the wood, so we want to make sure that the pores can accept the filler and won't pull back out when we're doing the actual filling process. Now I'm just sectioning off the board because I'm trying different techniques, different looks. And I'm using this General Finishes black water-based stain. You can get this at Woodcraft. I apply it with a foam brush, and after one pass we get pretty good coverage.
but still needs to be a bit darker. It hasn't penetrated the wood completely, so I'm going to put on a second coat. Now we're getting a nice, deep, rich black look that's penetrated into the wood. Now I'm just putting a very, very thin nitro sealer on here. This is half nitro lacquer, half thinner. And I'm only applying it to the top panel because I'm going to seal the top, then fill it, but then I'm going to fill that bottom panel in without a sealer just to get two different looks.
How much more black could this be? And the answer is none. None more black.
So after that, I took some Timbermate water-based filler and I applied it with 3/0 steel wool so it helps spread it into the pores and pull it back out. And I really like the look of that top panel. And the bottom panel that wasn't sealed, you can see that there's some scratch marks and some of the black stain has been taken up. So I think we're going to proceed with that top panel with the sealing over the black. I just wanted to make sure that it would accept the pore filler and give me the right look. So now we're going to decontaminate the body. We're going to make sure that we remove the waxes, and we do that with naphtha first. And lucky you, you get to see my dirty old socks. So we're going to do Nick's dirty sock count to see how many socks that I used during the finishing process. So we wipe the body down with naphtha, and then we follow with mineral spirits, which removes the silicone. And when we wipe the body down, you see the wetness come up. You can see some of the imperfections and the fillers in the body. And we'll address that as we go along here in the finishing process. You can see there's a little bit of a mark on the back of the body. So I'm definitely want to monitor that and see if that comes through when we apply the black stain. The last step is some ammonia dissolved in hot water. It removes the mineral spirits and any remaining silicone. And this will fur up the wood because you have the water on there. So we're going to go over the whole body with some 220. Make sure it's nice and level. Spray some compressed air on there. And then now we're going to open up the pores with a wire brush. So again, going over the whole body, scrubbing it to make sure that we deepen the pores and we put a hard edge on all of them so it'll accept the filler even after we stain and seal the body. So I blow all the dust out of the pores. And then I go over it with a tack cloth to make sure all the dust and residues off of there. Now for the fun part. I take the General Finishes black stain, mix it up real good because that stain will sit at the bottom of the can. And then we're going to apply with a foam applicator brush. And the idea here is we want to get nice even coverage, but we want to go over it when the foam brush is still a little bit wet so we don't get any streaks or buildup on the surface. We just want to penetrate the wood itself and not leave any streaks or drips on there. So I'll go over it once and then maybe touch it up with a much lighter coat just to make sure that it's deep into the wood. So here's how it looks after I'd say 1.5 coats of the black on the top. There's still a few spots with open pores with showing the mahogany through, but overall, again, a really nice, deep, rich black, and you can see that the pores are still open on the body. Now next I'm going to do something that they did at pre-CBS Fender. When they were finishing guitars, they would spray the top and then they would put 4 nails right into the top of the guitar to turn it over and suspend the wet top to finish the back. Now make no mistake about it, folks, this is where the secret to that pre-CBS tone comes in. Those aren't just nail holes for finishing, those are tone holes. So make no mistake about it, folks. That's the magic of those old Fenders. So here I'm just doing the same thing on the back, the foam applicator brush, getting a nice even coverage, then going over it when the foam's a little bit damp so to even it out, make sure there's no streaks or buildup on the surface. Then going on the sides, and you see there's that scrape on the side there, so we might have to burst over that later and hide some of the imperfections in the wood, and that's common in the end grained. So here it is. It's fully stained with that General Finishes black stain. Really uniform, no open spots, looking good. All the pores are still wide open. And the next step is we're going to seal the body. So we're going to use C-Grave nitrocellulose lacquer, and again, a really, really thin half and half, 1 part lacquer to 1 part thinner in a pre-val. I go across, triggering on and off, overlapping each spray, and you really have to figure out how to mix it because this is a pre-val sprayer, so you're at the mercy of the consistency of your finish and the weather, the humidity outside. You want it thick enough where it will protect that black stain, yet thin enough where it'll still accept the pore filler. So I'm going over everything once and then really paying attention to the sides and the contours because they just never get enough lacquer coverage. So I'm going over it again, taking care of those sides, getting 2 nice light coats of sealer. So here's how the body looks with those 2 coats of nitro sealer on there. You can see there's still the pores poking through. But we want to protect that black so it doesn't pull up during the grain filling process. So now we're adding the Timbermate white pore filler. And I thin this with some hot water and I just spread it on with an old gift card. And I try to scrape it off at a 45-degree angle, but it's drying really quickly, and I take a wet paper towel to try to dry it off. It's still not sticking in there like I want, so I apply it a little thicker, scrape it off again, try a Scotch-Brite pad, but really not getting the look I want. So here's the body on the back with 1 pass of the Timbermate filler, and it's looking pretty good. We're getting that dog hair look that we're going after, but there's still a little bit of that white residue from the filler on there that we want to try to get off. And it's still not completely filled. So I'm going to go ahead and go over it with a much thicker Timbermate. This is not thinned as much as before. I don't advise you to do the whole body like this, but I've learned that you just want to lay it on thick and get as best coverage as possible, and that 3/0 steel wool will pull it right out. And we're trying to keep as much filler in the pores to achieve that look, have an even finish, but get all that residue and white kind of haziness off the top of the body. So I make sure to spend extra time on the sides, trying to be very careful when I'm taking it up to not go through to the black stain through the sealer on there. It's very easy to go through. So here's the body after full application of the pore filler, and it's looking pretty good. You can see it's kind of dull and hazy from the filling process, and it's got a little bit of that kind of white residue still on the top. But once we start hitting this with some clear coats and burying it in lacquer, you're going to start to see it pop and that haziness is going to go away. So first we're going to use the Zinsser Bullseye Shellac. Basically 99% of the shellac out there is this Zinsser sealer. Just use it to try to lock in the pore filler and sand it back and get an even finish. Now with rattle cans, of course, you're going to get some orange peel like you see here. It's just part of the game, but like you said, we're going to be sanding a lot of this back anyways. We're just trying to get some level sealer coats. So here I'm taking some 320 dry sandpaper and going over it. And shellac sealer has a lubricant in the finish, so it helps sand a lot easier, so you don't necessarily have to do wet sanding here. So I'm just doing dry sanding on there and wiping it off with a paper towel to check my progress. So here's 2 of my projects side by side. Now I hit it with about 2 more thick coats of the shellac, trying to get the pores evened out because you still can see right here the pores poking through. They're not completely level. They weren't completely filled. A lot of heavy orange peel from trying to lay those shellac coats thick. And I'm using some Norton P320 wet dry sandpaper. This is kind of a higher end sandpaper. The P scratch pattern's a little bit finer. It's a European scratch pattern that's a little bit higher grade than just standard 320. So you see the leveling here. I'm trying to stay away from the contours, the tummy cut, and the edges, because you can break through those so easy. They do not get enough lacquer as it is. So I'm going to wait till later on in the process to sand those back. I'm just going to be very careful. And still, after about 4 coats of shellac, there's still a lot of shiny spots. You have the pores poking through. So I'm sanding most of this sealer off. So I hit it again with maybe 2 or 3 more coats of this Zinsser shellac. And it's starting to pop. You're starting to see the depth. You're starting to see the dog hair poke through the clear coats, which I like. But we're really trying to get that thick, clear, professional gloss, flat finish. We don't want any pores in there. So I hit it the next morning again with maybe another 2 coats of this shellac. Really want to get it even. You shouldn't have to put this much sealer on there, but we're doing this all with, consumer equipment by hand, trying to get this as clear as possible. But you can see after you're sanding here, I have like 6 coats of shellac, still got some shiny spots. So I said I gotta really attack this now, and I switched to a 2-part max spray catalyzed urethane finish, which is going to be much durable, much thicker. You only have about 24 to 48 hours for it to last with the catalyst, and it completely hardens. But I applied 2 coats, pretty heavy. Again, you get some orange peel here. There's still some spots where you have indentations coming through the top, and we want to get this completely level. So now I'm going to go and do some wet sanding here, again with some around 400 grit, wet and dry. Now this is a urethane catalyzed finish that cures chemically and is not an evaporated finish like shellac and lacquer is. When you sand this back, if you sand too far, you're going to see some telltale signs of going through the urethane, the catalyzed urethane. And you'll see it right here in the round over. That's a no-no. So that I broke through one of the layers of the mechanically bonded urethane, and there's a streak in the tummy cut where I was trying to get everything level, but I went a little too far. But we're going to hit it with a few more coats of that 2K Max to try to get a really deep, thick, level, glossy coat. Now keep in mind, I've sanded most of the finish I put on here back off the guitar. So here's after probably about 4 more coats of that urethane hanging up in my dad's garage over his old collectibles and classic cars. In our next episode, we're going to focus on the neck. So we're going to pre-install the tuners, and we're going to remove all the factory frets and reinstall evil gold Jescar fret wire. So please stay tuned. Like, comment, subscribe. Plenty more guitar building here on Bellezza Guitars.